Hello and welcome to Revelations Live. If this is the first time you are watching us, my name is Jordan Eckroth. I am the community manager at Gamechurch.com, and I am thrilled to welcome you to our show today. We're going to be talking about E3, the future of the event, our consumer mentality, and today with me I actually have a very special guest. This is M Joshua Cauller. He is a writer for Gamechurch.com, among many other things. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to be able to talk to you. It's the first time we've actually been able to talk face to face.
I know, yeah. We've spent ages talking and discussing things online, just seeing his little chat bubble. But here he is in the flesh. Yeah. Not really, but kind of.
Oh, yeah, sort of. In the digital flesh.
Yeah. So, okay, now we're going to talk about E3 today. Mm-hmm. And Josh, have you ever been to E3?
No, I personally have never been to E3. The biggest game expo that I've personally been to is the Penny Arcade Expo in East Side.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
But now you've been, just tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been playing games, I imagine, for quite some time?
Yeah, like most people in our age group, I've been playing games since, Atari NES age. But came into the game scene and didn't really know where Christian perspective played into that. Kind of gave up games for a little while. Thought it was counterproductive to my spiritual formation, but it was, I don't know, I believe that God really had this time for me to just grow and mature in my faith so that I could handle it and be able to instruct others. And how do you engage in your game habit faithfully, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, totally. That makes, and obviously I think there's a lot of people who have very similar experiences. Do you remember growing up and hearing about E3 and what a big deal it was?
Oh, yeah, totally. I remember seeing, just waiting for the little, short 10-second snippet on the news when they would announce E3 on, ABC News during the nighttime news and see, the little snippet of Donkey Kong 64 gameplay, what that game is, and how it is, where 64 era. But it's always been kind of one of those really, really big, exciting, I can't wait to know what's going to be happening in the future of games sort of thing. And as I've grown and come to be involved in the games journalism scene, I've effectively been jaded.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be jaded about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to get into that in a second. Man, I remember so for one, E3 was the biggest gaming thing, and it was just it was my dream to get to go there. Then do you remember when they first announced that it was going to be closed to the public? And you remember?
I forget exactly how all that came down, because I do know that it was a little bit of a surprise and shock when I realized that only press and only industry elite people to be there and that sort of thing, which kind of is like saying you can't go to Disneyland.
Yeah, that's how it felt for me. I remember it was when I was a teenager, I believe, in high school. And so, I'm getting older, I'm getting close to, having, some of my friends are able to drive, and I lived in Southern California anyway, so not too far from LA. I think I had my first part-time job, so I was making some money, and I remember, E3 was one of the things I wanted to go to, and then they announced that it was going to be closed to the public. It was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so, just the history of the event, then they made it, it was really small, I believe, only several thousand people were there, and I think they sort of realized that people weren't really into it as much then, so they've kind of loosened the grasp on it a little bit, and now it's a much bigger thing. I think they're expecting about 45,000 people to be there. But yeah, it's a big thing, and a lot of people pay attention to it. And so I want to kick off our conversation by talking about. Now, me and you we've spent some time kind of speculating about what Microsoft is going to be doing to kind of maybe recoup a little bit of their public image after a lot of the fallout after their press conference. talking about, how Sony is maybe trying to take the momentum that they've got and what they're going to do. We were talking about like what games are going to be announced. The thing is, by the time most people watch this, Microsoft and Sony and all of the big guys, Activision, Ubisoft, will have done their press conferences. So all of that will be out in the open. So the first topic that I want to really dig into is I want to talk about our consumer mentality. It's just something that it's so shocking to me that there is a company who makes a product. I mean, it's say Microsoft making an Xbox One. And there are so many people who have so much of an issue about the way this company is making their product that they're taking to Twitter and Facebook and their blogs to complain about it and recording videos on YouTube lamenting all of the issues. I mean, and obviously the cheap way out is just this, well, compared to the real world issues, I mean, there's terrible things happening in Syria. There's unrest in Turkey right now. And it's kind of, PRISM with the NSA last week, for crying out loud. And yet we're getting more upset. More than any of this, we're getting upset about the Xbox, it feels like. I mean, why do you think this is?
Oh, yeah. No, a lot of it has to do with what you engage with, what you focus all of your time and energy in. So if people are spending all their time and all their energy not engaged in world events, but instead, Call of Duty, then obviously the Call of Duty dog is going to be the biggest news that people are coming across. And then you have things like EA getting voted the worst company in the world, which, no one even knows the word Monsanto.
Yeah.
But there's tons of things. You're right. It just comes back to this whole entitlement culture. And what people are focused on the most is what they think is the largest and the biggest and most important. So a lot of it just comes down to people having a desire to blow off all the steam and air that they have on whatever they're engaged in, which isn't necessarily the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you there. I mean, and here we have E3 is kind of like, well, other than, I suppose, the holiday season where we actually go and buy all of this stuff, E3 seems to be, the celebration in the video game industry of this consumer mentality, where these companies spend millions of dollars to just show off their product. And people clamor for the chance to crowd into this stuffed convention hall and just shuffle around, taking in all of this advertising. And that's something, that we were talking about just a second ago. That's something that as children you long to be a part of.
Yeah.
Do you see this as perhaps even the event itself as a something that could be, in a way, morally wrong? Do you think, in that it promotes all the wrong things?
Yeah, I think that's potentially quite possible. One of the things that is consistent about the whole event, one of the things people, even IGN, criticizes about the event is how much it's focused on financial stats. Mm-hmm. And when Sony shows up to these events and they start telling people about the sales and the numbers and things along those lines, that's really what it's all about for them. That's really what it's all about for all the people who are involved is, are we able to make money? Mm-hmm. And the E3 event is primarily about the investors. And we'll get more into that, of course, in more of our conversation. But the aspect that we forget as entitled gamers as we go into it is that it's not actually about us. It's about how people can be making money off of us. And that's what E3 is actually really about, is how do these people make money off of gamers.
Yeah. So say then just your average gamer who's very interested in E3 right now. They've seen trailers for Watch Dogs. They've heard some of the controversy about the Xbox One. Heard a lot of their friends complaining about it. What do you think is the proper attitude that a person should have when approaching this event and the advertising and the spectacle and the showiness of it?
I think I don't want to say it's best to be jaded, because I think that having a cynical attitude is actually not very beneficial at all. Mm-hmm. But having a relative humility about the whole event, and understand that it's not about us, it's not about what we want, even though it's showing a lot of things that we do want. Mm-hmm. and that there are more important things to be involved in life. As we are representing Gamechurch, there's a certain level of caring about the people around us that matter, caring about the world around us that is important. How do we engage in games in a way that connects us with other people, or how do we do things that involve other people, not just E3 and going too far down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. But that's just my opinion. That's not necessarily don't want to put the stamp of Gamechurch approval on that.
Oh, I wouldn't put the stamp of Gamechurch approval on anything you say. I'm just kidding, but no, that is a really good point. And I mean, I think obviously we come to this event that it's interesting because of course you can't actually buy anything at the event, and so I think that kind of plays into sort of what you were saying, is that we're not even necessarily the clients of this thing, but we approach this and all of these products are being promoted, and I think what we need to keep in mind is that these things are products, and we do live in a consumer culture, and it's very easy to just buy into. I think even just the notion that if I can get this thing, it will make me happy. And of course, we see that in every single industry, every single corner of our society. Yeah. If I can have this thing, it will make me happy. And so I think especially as gamers, we love video games. I mean, we can embrace and celebrate the medium, but we also, really need to just watch out to make sure we're not overvaluing the medium.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point.
I wanted to move on then to, now this is something that you've mentioned several times, is just the idea of who E3 is even for. Is it for us? Is it a presentation to try to get us to buy something? Or is it for investors? Now, what's your take on the subject?
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of like the prism zoetrope. Like you see inside a prism, and inside is actually a mirror, and you're actually seeing a glimpse of yourself. And so it's this confusing picture because it looks like it's about us who is the gamers, but it's actually about the people who are making the games and seeing what their investors think of that. And so the investors who are putting the money forward so that the games can be made, because making games is so expensive, and them putting the money out there is really a lot of the time kind of them gambling these retirement funds and various forms of investments that people have put up, so that they want to make more money back than what they put into a game. So it's them showing the developer showing the game for the investors, and the investors kind of seeing the gamers' reaction to them.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this weird vision you're going through to see the whole perspective, but it ultimately is about the investors. Because if the investors don't like it, the money isn't going to be given to the games. The games aren't going to get made. They're not going to have the budgets. They're not going to have the time frame. They're not going to have all that they need to come out and be made well.
Yeah. I mean, and I certainly see that as, for early looks or first reveals of games. But there are a lot of games. I mean, for instance, I mentioned it earlier, a really big game that people are looking forward to this year is Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
And obviously that's, very far along in development already. Oh, yeah. They've secured funding, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
So, it seems to me that it becomes more about just it's advertising. It's just getting people to buy it. In a sense, because we're buying the product, aren't we the investors then at this point?
At a certain point, yeah, but that only happens by the time that the game comes out. Mm-hmm. So when the game is actually out, there's no more a flow of money on the investor's side. There's no more return on all of that. So I think that once it actually gets into, once it gets past us that certain release point, no more money is going into the game. No more money is going into that project. Now it's all about return to the investor. All the money is going at that point to the investor. And that's why a lot of developers don't see a lot of the return, and that's why a lot of people don't like the publisher-developer-investor relationship and want to go indie.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. I kind of want to talk about then indies as our next topic, or sort of just the idea that, we've been spending some time talking about almost the corruption that's inherent in the current event, that it is just this big, gaudy, showy, flashy, mess. And I've been reading, because this is going to be my first E3 that I'm at,
Yeah.
on the floor talking to people, and I'm really excited. It's a big thing. It'll be fun to be a part of it. But as we talk about this and we talk about just what it is, I was reading, kind of what I could expect from the experience. I mean, of course,
Cool.
every year I've seen you see the screenshots and the demos and the
Yeah.
trailers. But I was just reading from a lot of different game journalists, like what their thoughts on E3, and I just keep from these people in the industry who have been more than one time, who have been throughout the years. I just keep reading all of these comments about what a mess it is to actually be there, like how exhausting it is to
Yeah.
walk around, how
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's and there is that jadedness, how it's not even necessarily fun for them to be there anymore.
No,
because
it's. I mean, like most of them are over the age of 25 and no longer have the sprightly energy to be able to last for 4 days without sleep and all of that.
Yeah, totally. And so, I mean, we have this as it is, and it seems like the people who are most invested in the medium itself and the future of video games are actually the least satisfied with this event as it stands. So I kind of wanted to talk about what do you sort of see as the future of this event? I just have this really interesting idea in my mind that what if Cannes Film Festival or Sundance Film Festival was basically a collection of trailers for the latest summer blockbusters? Because that's what E3 is. It's like the biggest event in the video game world, but it's not about the artsy, meaningful, experimental, dangerous games. It's about the safe, let's blow things up, let's try to make this look as cool as it possibly can. Do you think that's sustainable?
Oh, it's definitely not sustainable. I remember last year at E3, I read an article from Gamechurch about how when they showed the trailer for Splinter Cell Blacklist, and it ended with just this brutal violence and brutal terror, just violence. I'm forgetting the right word, but just
Torture?
This torture. Yeah, the right word. Sorry, but just this torture on a dude, and everyone just kind of cheering. And oh no, it wasn't just that. It was also when they revealed The Last of Us, and it revealed Joel shooting a guy who's pleading for his life, and then people raised their hands, "Whoa, this is awesome!" And the Gamechurch guys were like, "Maybe this isn't good for the future of games." And a lot of the people in the game journalism scene are kind of waking up to, these aren't good trends. I don't like where things are going. I don't like all of the negative. And it was a Grantland article that was about the torture in Splinter Cell. But all these negative images of violence, that is the mainstream. It's causing a lot of the game journalists to like us to really kind of criticize all of it, and I really wonder if this E3 we're going to see some of the effects of that really playing out. Some of the criticisms starting to mature into more mature games, and by more mature I mean things that actively cause us to reflect on important issues, of course. That Dragon Cancer is going to be there this year.
Yeah.
So I hope you don't mind if I segue a little bit into the issue of the importance of the indie games that are going to be at this event.
Absolutely, because I see these as and not just the idea. We kind of celebrate the what we call the indie games. And that's, to me, that's not as much of a meaningful term, because
that's a good point.
It does. It certainly reflects a shift in the kind of the financial structure of the way things are being published, but yeah, I absolutely agree that I think what you're talking about, games like that Dragon Cancer and off the wall things like Dominique Pamplemousse that are going to be showed off, and so I really am excited because so IndieCade actually has a booth at E3. That's what I'm most looking forward to, is the games that are going to be there, these kind of these meaningful and artistic games.
And not only that is the IndieCade showcase, but there's the Indies Crash E3. I don't know if those two are related. Are those related?
That's actually a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay, I should have investigated that first. Sorry. But there's
I'll let
also
you know.
Horizon. Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, you'll be there. So then there's the Horizon at MoMA, which is uh, I'm forgetting the actual people who are putting that up, but it's going to be a special event at the Museum of Modern Art with Double Fine, Cappy, and Medium
Oh,
Molecule are
that's
going to be
the
showing
Venus
up.
Patrol, right?
Yeah, Venus Patrol is
Okay.
going to be putting that together. Um, and those are just all kind of like happening around E3. Obviously, the Indiecade Showcase and Indies Crash E3, that's all going to be actually on a floor. But then Horizon is going to be at Museum of Modern Art nearby in town. Then Ouya is going to be in the parking lot. Is that what's going to be going on? Um,
Yeah, it's just chilling in the parking lot, showing it off to the public. Yeah, I mean, so there's all of these things, and so right now, E3 is the big thing, and all of these different indie groups have kind of attached themselves to it. This is kind of the final word I want to, or the final question. We've have these kind of indie groups attaching themselves to E3, but we also have various different conferences like Indiecade itself, which happens, I
yeah,
believe, in September or October. Do you kind of see E3 as this event that sort of shifts to accommodate what many people are hoping is going to be the more meaningful and authentic and almost soulful future of games? Or
yeah.
do you kind of see it staying as it is, this massive consumer thing, and seeing other events rise up in other locations and in other times? What do you think? Just
Yeah,
your off the
that's a
cuff
really good
reaction.
question
Tell me the future,
because
Josh.
yeah, the future is a lot more indie, well, quote unquote indies, the small guys. But I don't know how that's going to relate to the financial structure. Like I said, E3 is really about the investors, and they're the ones who are paying for the $5 million booths and things
Yep.
along those
There's
lines.
still a ton of money there.
There's so much money. But when I was at PAX East earlier this year, I realized at least half of the event was like indie booths, which was not the case in previous years. And the games that people were most talking about were not the really big elite titles. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it was so much more about the dozens and dozens of small games that are trying to appeal to a different demographic or do something completely different. Even iOS games. I was surprised at how many booths of iOS games were there. So I think that at E3 you're going to see that the money is starting to show up for those smaller games, and investors are taking notice. And I mean, a lot of the iOS developers that I know personally are funded entirely by investors.
Okay.
So the likelihood of even though they're quote unquote indie, they have investors.
Yeah,
Um,
so
so
definitely.
we're going to see a lot more of that of the mid tier, smaller tier games that are coming through that might
Cool.
still have the title indie, but really they're just smaller, not watchdog sized games.
Okay, interesting. All right, hey, well, thank you for reading my tea leaves, as it were. And honestly, Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed having you.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
Totally. And hey, anyone who's been watching, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what we talked about, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you like what we do at Gamechurch, you should follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. We also have a group on Facebook called Gamechurch City, where we basically have conversations kind of like this, but just all as a collective. It's really fun. You can just search for that, or there will be a link down below, Gamechurch City. And once again, thank you so much for watching. We're going to have lots of pictures and, just little blurbs coming out of E3 letting you know what we're doing there and how we're doing. And, yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead, tweet at us. We love to hear what you have to say. So hope everyone has an incredible day. Josh, hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
You too,
And
Jordan. Have a great E3.
absolutely. Thank you. And everyone, we will see you next week here on Revelations Live.